The coffee mug warmed my palms as I stood on the front porch, watching fat snowflakes drift down through the bare branches of the oak trees. Barnaby slept at my feet, his graying muzzle twitching with dreams, one ear pressed against the weathered boards. It was 9 inches the morning, and the silence of Oak Haven in winter was absolute, the kind of quiet that made you believe you could finally breathe. Then the engines shattered everything. 2 black SUVs and a massive U-Haul truck roared up the narrow lane, their tires spitting slush and gravel. They stopped hard at my wrought iron gate, engines still running, exhaust clouding the frozen air. My heart lurched into my throat. I was already running before the first door opened. Dad Declan stepped out of the lead SUV, adjusting his wool coat like he was arriving at a country club. That conqueror's smile. That same expression he'd worn when he convinced me to co-sign his business loan 6 years ago, the one I was still paying off. Then Felix jumped down from the truck's cab, already barking orders at 3 men in the back. "Careful with those server racks. Don't scratch the casings." He didn't even look at me. Didn't acknowledge my existence as he directed them to start unloading equipment right there on the curb, blocking the entire street. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Barnaby had woken, pressing against my legs, a low whine building in his chest. Declan's smile widened. "Harper, sweetheart, we're home." Home. The word hit me like a fist. 2 years. 2 years of 80-hour weeks at the architectural conservation firm, nosebleeds from exhaustion, living on ramen and black coffee. 2 years of saving every cent of that $300,000 bonus so I could buy this place, Blackwood Manor, and register it under the Oak Haven Heritage Trust, to keep it anonymous, to keep them from finding me. I'd been so careful. I'd changed my phone number. I'd kept my address off every database. I'd even used a P.O. box, 4 towns over, for my mail. But I'd made one mistake. One stupid, arrogant mistake. 3 months ago, I'd posted a close-up photo of the Manor's rare rose window on an anonymous architecture forum. Just the window, no location tags, no identifying information. But the Oak Haven Historical Society had seen it, recognized it, and reshared it publicly on Facebook with the full address, gushing about the restoration of this local treasure. And my mother had Google alerts set up for my name, my old addresses, architectural terms I used in college papers, even the make of my car. She'd found me within hours. "How did you know I was here?" I managed, gripping the gate's iron bars. Declan pointed casually toward the tree line across the street. "I parked right over there for 14 hours yesterday. Watched you walk the dog at 7:30. Saw your Volvo in the drive. Saw you leave for the grocery store and come back alone." He tilted his head, studying me like I was a specimen. "I know you're all alone in this big house, Harper. That's no way to live." The calculation in his voice made my skin crawl. This wasn't a surprise visit. This was reconnaissance. This was tactical. "You need to leave," I said, forcing steel into my voice. "This is private property. You're not welcome here." Felix finally looked at me then, his expression somewhere between pity and contempt. "Harper, don't be dramatic. We're family." He gestured at the server racks being stacked on my curb. "And I've got a business to run. The lease is already signed." "What lease?" Declan pulled a folded document from his coat pocket, waving it like a flag of truce. "Felix is renting your basement. Very reasonable terms, $1 a month for 5 years. You signed it last month, remember?" The world tilted. "I never signed anything." "Your signature's right there, sweetheart." I didn't open the gate. I didn't move. Every instinct I'd spent 2 years rebuilding screamed at me that this was a trap, that opening that gate even an inch would be the end of everything. Declan's smile faded. He pulled out his phone. 20 minutes later, a locksmith's van pulled up. A middle-aged man in coveralls stepped out, toolbox in hand, and Declan intercepted him before he reached the gate. I watched through the bars as my father transformed, shoulders slumping, voice dropping to a concerned, paternal murmur. He showed the locksmith his ID, pointed at the last name we shared. "I'm her father," Declan said, loud enough for me to hear. "I live here. My daughter's having a mental health crisis. She's locked herself inside and won't let anyone in. We're worried sick about her." The locksmith glanced at me, then at Declan's kind, worried face. At Felix standing nearby, looking appropriately concerned. "I understand, sir," the locksmith said quietly. He approached the gate, drill in hand. "Miss, I'm going to need you to step back." "Don't you dare!" I shouted. "This is my property. He doesn't live here. He's lying." But the drill was already screaming, metal on metal, and the sound triggered something primal in Barnaby. The old dog started barking deep, terrified barks that tore at his throat. He'd come from a shelter, found wandering a highway with cigarette burns on his back. Loud machinery still sent him spiraling into panic. Felix's patience snapped. While the locksmith worked the front gate, my brother strode along the fence line to where the decorative iron dipped lower, half hidden behind overgrown forsythia bushes. He grabbed the top bar, hauled himself up and over with a grunt, and dropped into my yard. Barnaby lunged, trying to protect me, but his arthritic hips trembled with the effort. He hesitated for a split second, fear warring with loyalty. It was all the time Felix needed. His boot came up fast and brutal, catching the old dog square in the hip. Barnaby yelped a sound I'd never heard him make, high and agonized, and scrambled away from Felix's reaching hands. "Barnaby, no!" I screamed. But Felix had already reached the gate's interior latch. He twisted it, and the gate swung wide. Barnaby, terrified and hurting, bolted straight through the opening and out onto the road. The busy, icy road where cars came flying around the blind curve at 40 miles an hour. I didn't think. I ran. Behind me, I heard the SUV engines rev. Heard the truck's hydraulic lift whining. Heard Felix laughing as he waved the convoy through. By the time I reached Barnaby, shaking in a snowbank, eyes wild with fear, my family's vehicles were already rolling through my gate and up my drive. The occupation had begun. I stumbled back through the gate 15 minutes later, Barnaby trembling in my arms. He was too heavy for me to carry far, but I couldn't put him down, couldn't risk him running again. His hip joint clicked with each breath, and I felt the wetness of his tears soaking into my coat. Declan blocked my front door, that lease agreement now held up like a shield. "I'm glad you're back, Harper. Let's talk about this reasonably." He gestured toward the open door behind him, where I could hear heavy equipment scraping across my floors. "Felix is just setting up his operation in the basement. Very quiet, very professional. You won't even know we're here." I pushed past him, Barnaby still clutched to my chest. The oak door, my beautiful, restored oak door, stood wide open, letting in the cold. Snow was already melting on the original hardwood floors. "Get out," I said. "All of you. Get out of my house." Declan's expression shifted to something almost paternal. "Harper, I know you're upset, but look at this." He smoothed the lease document against the doorframe. "This is a legal agreement. Felix rents the basement for $1 per month, 5-year term. Your signature, your witness, everything properly notarized." I finally lowered Barnaby to the floor, my arms burning. The old dog immediately limped to the corner and collapsed, whimpering. I looked at the lease. The signature looked like mine. The notary stamp was crisp and official. The date was from 6 weeks ago, a Tuesday, when I'd been at a conservation conference in Boston. "This is forged," I said flatly. "I was in Boston that day. I never signed this." "That's not what the document says." "I don't care what it says. It's fake, and you know it." Felix emerged from the basement door, wiping dust from his hands onto his jeans. He was holding a voltage meter. "What are you doing down there?" I demanded. "Just checking the load capacity," Felix said, his voice dismissive. "Old houses have terrible wiring. I need to make sure the circuits can handle the rigs." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "Oakhaven Police?" The dispatcher answered. "I need an officer at Blackwood Manor immediately. I have intruders who broke into my home and assaulted my dog. They're refusing to leave." Declan didn't even flinch. He just folded the lease back into his pocket and smiled. The wait for the police felt like hours, though it was barely 30 minutes before Sheriff Brody's cruiser crunched up the gravel drive. He was a tall man in his 50s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades refereeing small-town disputes. I met him at the door, still holding Barnaby's collar to keep him from trying to follow me outside in his panic. "Thank you for coming, Sheriff. These people broke into my home." "Now, hold on." Brody raised a hand, his voice calm and measured. He looked past me at Declan, who had positioned himself in the foyer like he owned the place. "Sir, are you a resident here?" Declan produced the lease with a flourish. "My son Felix rents the basement. This is a legal tenancy agreement. Signed by the property owner, my daughter, Harper Lawson. Brody took the document, studied it carefully, looked at the signature, the notary seal, the terms. Miss Lawson, is this your signature? No, it's forged. I've never rented anything to anyone. This is my home, and they have no legal right to be here. The sheriff's expression shifted, not unsympathetic, but resigned. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but this appears to be a civil matter. Your brother has a lease agreement that appears valid on its face. I'm not a handwriting expert, and I'm not a judge. If this signature is fraudulent, you'll need to prove that in civil court and go through the formal eviction process. Eviction? Sheriff, they kicked my dog. They broke in here with bolt cutters. Did anyone witness the alleged assault on the animal? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I'd been out on the road when Felix kicked Barnaby. The locksmith had been focused on the gate. It was Felix's word against mine. I felt the ground shifting under me. This wasn't about justice. This was about procedure, technicalities, the difference between civil and criminal law. Declan smiled at the sheriff. Officer, I think my daughter just needs some time to adjust to the new arrangement. Family can be complicated. I looked at Barnaby, limping and whimpering in the corner. At Felix, grinning from the basement doorway. At my father, playing the reasonable patriarch. And I realized, the law was being weaponized to protect the people hurting me. Fine, I said quietly. Sheriff, thank you for your time. Brody tipped his hat, clearly relieved to escape the domestic minefield. You folks work this out, and please, keep it civil. As Brody turned to leave, I pulled out my phone. My contacts list still had them all. Mom, Dad, Felix. I scrolled past those and found the number Sterling Vane had given me when he'd helped me set up the Oakhaven Heritage Trust. I put Sterling on speakerphone so Declan could hear every word. My lawyer's voice filled the foyer, precise and cutting. Mr. Lawson, Sterling said, his tone cordial but edged with steel. I'm sure you're aware that Harper Lawson is not the legal owner of Blackwood Manor. The property is held in trust by the Oakhaven Heritage Trust, a registered nonprofit entity. Harper is the trustee, not the owner. Declan froze. Sterling continued. Which means that lease agreement, the one with Harper's signature, is invalid regardless of its authenticity. Harper cannot rent property she doesn't personally own. Any rental agreement would need to be executed by the trust itself, with proper board approval and documentation. I watched my father's face cycle through confusion, anger, and finally calculation. Furthermore, Sterling added, if that signature is forged, as Harper claims, then you've used fraudulent documents to gain access to trust property. That's not a civil matter, Mr. Lawson. That's criminal trespass on a nonprofit entity, a felony in this state. Felix's grin vanished. Dad, what's he talking about? Declan held up a hand, silencing him. This is a family misunderstanding. I'm not confused, I said softly. Sheriff Brody? The sheriff had paused on the porch. He turned back, his expression hardening as he processed the lawyer's words. Trespassing on a trust was a different beast entirely. Mr. Lawson, Brody said, stepping back inside. If you cannot prove you have an agreement with the trust, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises until this is verified by a court. Declan's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw the rage underneath. You're making a mistake, Harper, he said quietly. Family is supposed to help each other. Tell your lawyer that, I replied. The heavy clouds made the day feel older than it was as they loaded back into their vehicles. They would be heading to the Motel 6 Inches town. Felix paused at the threshold, giving me one last look. Enjoy the darkness, little sister. I didn't understand what he meant until I closed the door and locked it. Silence returned to the house, but something was wrong. The hum of the refrigerator was gone. The thermostat display in the hallway was blank. I ran to the basement. The main breaker panel was open. Felix hadn't just checked the capacity. He had severed the main feed wires to the furnace and the kitchen circuit. He'd sabotaged the heating system before the sheriff even walked in the door. I wrapped myself in blankets and sat on the floor next to Barnaby, both of us shivering. Outside, the temperature dropped to -3 degrees. Inside, I deleted Mom and Dad from my emergency contacts and saved Sterling Vane to my favorites. The battle had just begun. The house felt like a tomb. I woke on the second day, wrapped in 3 blankets on the living room sofa, my breath clouding in the frigid air. Barnaby was pressed against my legs, shivering despite the old quilt I'd tucked around him. The Victorian radiators stood silent and cold, the elaborate ironwork now just decorative coffins for a heating system Felix had murdered. I'd called 4 electricians the night before. 3 hadn't answered. The 4th had listened to my description of the damage and said he couldn't come until after New Year's, a week away. Everyone was booked, or gone, or unwilling to drive out to Oakhaven in the snow for an emergency call. So I sat in the cold and did the only thing I could. I documented everything. Photos of the electrical panel, wires hanging like severed arteries, close-ups of Barnaby's hip, the bruising now dark purple beneath his fur. Screenshots of the property deed showing the Oakhaven Heritage Trust as the legal owner, the forged lease agreement, photographed from every angle. I was uploading the files to a secure cloud drive when my phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Lawson? A woman's voice, professional and irritated. This is Patricia Newell from Oakhaven Electric. I'm calling about the account transfer request we received this morning. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I didn't request any transfer. Our records show a request, submitted at 8:47 a.m., to transfer the account for Blackwood Manor from your name to Felix Lawson. The caller provided your social security number for verification. Ice flooded my veins, and not from the temperature. That wasn't me. Someone's committing identity fraud. A pause. I see. Can you verify your social security number now? I did, and heard Patricia's typing accelerate. All right, Miss Lawson. I'm flagging this as fraudulent and reversing the transfer. You'll want to file a police report immediately. Whoever called us this morning had access to your personal information. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Felix didn't have my social security number. I'd never shared it with him, but Mom did. Mom had co-signed my student loans. Mom had my SSN memorized, written in her precise handwriting in the family records she kept. And she'd just handed it to Felix to commit utility fraud, to manufacture proof of residency, to build his fraudulent claim to my home. I called Sterling Vane. Harper. He answered immediately. I've been expecting your call. I saw the social media posts. What posts? He sighed. Your mother has been active on Facebook since yesterday evening. According to her narrative, you've kicked your elderly parents out into the cold, refused to let your brother operate his legitimate business, and are having some kind of breakdown. She's rallying quite a bit of sympathy. I pulled up Facebook on my laptop. Mom's page was public, and she'd been busy. Heartbroken tonight, her latest post read. My daughter has locked us out of the family home in this freezing weather. We've tried everything to reach her, but she's not well. Please keep Harper in your prayers. Sometimes mental illness makes people turn against those who love them most. 300 reactions. 87 comments, most expressing concern and sympathy. I closed the laptop before I could read the comments. Harper? Sterling's voice pulled me back. Are you still there? They're lying about everything. I know, which is why we're going to hit them with everything we have. His tone shifted to something razor sharp. The utility fraud gives us ammunition. I want you to file a police report immediately for identity theft. Then we're filing a complaint with the FTC. This isn't just about your house anymore. Felix just committed a federal crime. Will it be enough? It's a start. But Harper, I need you to understand something. Your family is fighting dirty because they're desperate. Felix was evicted from his last place 6 months ago. He owes over $8,000 in back rent. Your parents' credit is destroyed. They're out of options, out of money, and they see your house as their last chance. So what do? You become a fortress. Every move they make, we counter. Every lie they tell, we document. And most importantly, we make them radioactive. He paused. Have you considered going public? Public how? The Oakhaven Zoning Board meets virtually tomorrow morning. I'm filing an emergency complaint tonight. Felix wants to run a crypto mining operation and industrial facility in a Class A historic district. That's a direct violation of preservation codes. I felt something shift in my chest, not quite hope, but close. They'll shut him down? They'll blacklist him. And more importantly, it'll be a matter of public record. Your mother wants to play the sympathy game? Let's show the town exactly what kind of business Felix is really running. After we hung up, I made the calls. First to the Oakhaven Police Department, filing a formal identity theft report. Then to the Federal Trade Commission, documenting the utility fraud. Each form I filled out, each case number I received, felt like laying bricks in a wall between me and them. I was heating soup on a camp stove, the only way to cook without power, when my phone buzzed with a text from an old college friend who still lived in town. Harper, heads up. Saw your brother and dad at Clarkson's Hardware this afternoon. They were buying bolt cutters and asking about gate locks. Looked intense. You okay? My hand tightened on the phone. Bolt cutters. They were planning another breach. But this time, they wouldn't have the excuse of a mental health emergency or a fake lease to hide behind. This time, it would be pure, undeniable criminal trespass. I forwarded the text to Sterling, then walked through the dark, freezing house to check every lock, every window. Barnaby limped after me, whining softly, sensing my fear. "It's okay, boy," I whispered, running my hand over his graying head. "We're going to be okay." But I wasn't sure I believed it. Outside, the wind howled through the bare trees. Snow began to fall again, thick and heavy, and my family was buying bolt cutters. The Oakhaven Zoning Board met via video conference the next morning at 10 a.m. I sat in my freezing living room, laptop balanced on my knees, watching the gallery of faces populate the screen. Sterling appeared in his own window, dressed in a suit despite working from home. Agenda Item 7. The board chair announced. A stern woman named Margaret Rhodes. Emergency preservation complaint regarding 1847 Blackwood Manor, filed by Sterling Vane on behalf of the Oakhaven Heritage Trust. Sterling unmuted himself. "Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. We've received credible intelligence that Felix Lawson intends to operate a commercial cryptocurrency mining facility from the basement of Blackwood Manor, a Class A historic property in a residential preservation district. This operation would involve industrial electrical demands, heat generation, and 24-hour mechanical noise, all of which violate Section 12.3 of the town's Historic Preservation Code." One of the board members leaned forward. "Has Mr. Lawson applied for commercial permits?" "No, sir. He attempted to enter the property using fraudulent lease documentation and has made no effort to comply with any commercial zoning requirements." Margaret Rhodes' expression hardened. "Does Mr. Lawson wish to address this complaint?" Silence. Felix and Declan weren't on the call. They'd probably never even known about the meeting. "Very well. The board will issue an emergency, cease and desist order effective immediately. Any attempt by Felix Lawson to operate a commercial enterprise from Blackwood Manor will result in daily fines of $1,000 and potential criminal charges for zoning violations." She looked directly into the Pravasad camera. "Mr. Vane, please forward this order to the Oakhaven Police Department for enforcement." "Thank you, Madam Chair." The meeting continued, but I'd stopped listening. The fortress wall had just grown higher. By evening, Felix knew. I discovered this when my phone exploded with notifications, all from the private messages Tiffany, his girlfriend who, helping them from the shadow, was broadcasting on her Instagram. "Felix, the town just blacklisted me. My sister destroyed everything. Felix, we can't stay at the motel anymore. My card got declined. We're out of money. Felix, this is your fault. You had to go psycho with the lawyers." I screenshot every message and sent them to Sterling. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went on offense. There was a local blogger in Oakhaven, a retired journalist named Linda Mercer who ran a community news site. She covered everything from town meetings to local business disputes, and she had a reputation for being thorough and fair. I sent her an email. "Miss Mercer, my name is Harper Lawson, and I'm the trustee of the Oakhaven Heritage Trust, which owns Blackwood Manor. I wanted to make you aware of a situation that may be of interest to your readers. I attached the zoning board decision, Felix's eviction records from his previous rental public record, easily searchable, and the police report I'd filed for identity theft. My family has attempted to seize control of a historic property using forged documents and fraudulent utility transfers. They've been blocked by the zoning board, but I thought the community should be aware of the situation. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Linda replied within 2 hours. "Harper, I'd like to speak with you on the record. Are you available tomorrow morning?" But tomorrow was still too far away. That night, as I sat bundled in blankets with Barnaby curled against my side, I heard a vehicle pull up outside. Just one, moving slowly, headlights off. I crept to the window and peered through the heavy curtains. Declan's SUV, idling at the end of the driveway, watching the house. After 10 minutes, it drove away. They were reconnoitering again. Planning. I pulled out my phone and called Chase, the archaeologist from the Historical Society who'd been helping with the Manor's garden restoration. We'd worked together on several projects over the past year, and he'd proven himself to be quiet, competent, and trustworthy. Chase, I need a favor. It might sound strange. Try me. His voice was calm, unbothered by the late hour. I explained the situation. Not all of it, but enough. The family, the fake lease, the threats. I think they're going to try to break in again. Soon. And I need to make sure this gate holds. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He arrived with his truck bed full of tools and materials. Together, we reinforced the gate discreetly, adding internal braces that wouldn't be visible from the street, installing a heavy-duty padlock that couldn't be drilled easily. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would telegraph our preparations. Harper, he said as we worked, his breath fogging in the cold. You know you don't have to face this alone, right? I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. The steady hands, the careful attention to detail, the way he'd dropped everything to help me without asking questions. Thank you, I said quietly. I mean it. If you need anything. Actually, I interrupted, an idea crystallizing. There's something. New Year's Eve. Are you free? By the next morning, Linda Mercer's article was live on her site. Historic property dispute turns ugly. Family accused of fraud and zoning violations. The piece was scrupulously fair. She'd even reached out to Declan for comment, though he'd declined, but the facts spoke for themselves. Felix's eviction history, the forged lease, the zoning board ruling, all laid out in clean, verifiable detail. The comments section filled within 1 hour. The town's sympathy for my homeless family evaporated as people realized what was actually happening. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. We're family. You don't destroy family. I forwarded it to Sterling and Sheriff Brody. Then I started making other calls, quiet calls, to the mayor's office, to the president of the Historical Society, to carefully selected members of Oak Haven's small but influential social circle. I'm hosting a small New Year's Eve gathering. I told each of them. Nothing fancy, just close friends. I'd be honored if you could join me. Every single one accepted. I gave them all specific instructions. Park at the rear entrance. Come in through the garden gate. Keep it quiet. The front of the house needed to look abandoned. Chase helped me prep the interior. We brought in a piano player, a small catering setup, enough champagne for 30 people. On New Year's Eve morning, Tiffany posted one final video. She was standing outside the Motel 6, Felix visible in the background loading suitcases into the truck. This is it, you guys, she said, her voice shaking. We're officially homeless. Felix's evil sister has destroyed us, but we're not giving up. Tonight we're going to reclaim what's rightfully ours. Justice will be served. I watched the video 3 times, memorizing every detail. Then I called Sheriff Brody. Sheriff, I have reason to believe my family will attempt to break into Blackwood Manor tonight. I have video evidence of them threatening to reclaim the property, and a witness who saw them purchase bolt cutters. I'm formally requesting police presence. There was a long pause. Miss Lawson, I'll be attending your New Year's gathering as a guest, but I'll have my badge with me. If anything happens, we'll handle it appropriately. Thank you, Sheriff. The trap was set. New Year's Eve arrived with brittle, crystalline cold. I'd finally gotten the heating system repaired. It had cost $4,000 to fix the damage Felix caused, and Blackwood Manor was warm again for the first time in a week. I kept the heavy velvet curtains drawn tight in the front rooms. Not a sliver of light could escape to the street. From outside, the house had to look empty. Guests arrived throughout the afternoon, all through the back entrance as instructed. The mayor and his wife, the president of the Historical Society. Sheriff Brody in a suit, though his badge was clipped to his belt. Local architects, preservationists, and a few of the wealthier donors who supported historic properties in town. Chase had helped me set up the great room warm lamps, a string quartet playing in the corner, catering stations with elegant finger foods. It looked like a scene from a Gilded Age party, all the more surreal given what I knew was coming. Are you sure about this? Chase asked quietly, handing me a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking. It's not too late to just call the police now. I'm sure. I looked around the room at the assembled crowd, people of influence, witnesses, the exact opposite of what Felix expected to find. They need to face consequences. Real consequences. And for that to happen, they need to commit a crime that can't be explained away as a civil matter. At 11:30 p.m., I positioned myself near the curtained front windows, creating a small gap to watch. Most of the guests were mingling in the great room, unaware of what I was anticipating. The string quartet played something soft and elegant. Crystal clinked against crystal. It was perfect. Then I saw them. 2 vehicles, headlights off, rolling slowly up the lane. They parked at the tree line across the street, just visible in the ambient glow of the streetlights. I watched 3 figures emerge: Declan, Felix, and Tiffany, her phone already up and recording. They're here, I said quietly. Chase appeared at my shoulder, and Sheriff Brody casually drifted closer, his hand resting near his badge. The mayor noticed the shift in energy and moved to the window. Harper, what's happening? Watch. Felix led the approach, bolt cutters gleaming in his hands. Tiffany walked beside him, phone held high, live streaming to her followers. It's 11:45 on New Year's Eve, she announced breathlessly to the camera. We're about to reclaim justice. Felix's sister has been illegally keeping him from his property, but that ends tonight. Watch this, you guys. This is what standing up for yourself looks like. They reached the gate. Felix examined the reinforced lock, the one Chase and I had installed, and positioned the bolt cutters. The blades bit into the metal with a sharp crack that echoed across the frozen yard. The lock fell away. Felix kicked the gate open, the iron clanging against the stone post. Then he strode up the walkway toward my front door, Declan and Tiffany trailing behind. Harper! Felix's voice boomed across the property. I know you're in there. This is my house now. You can't hide anymore. He reached the oak door, my beautiful, painstakingly restored oak door, and kicked it. Once, twice. The frame held. But on the third kick, the lock mechanism gave way and the door crashed inward. Felix stormed into the entryway, bolt cutters still gripped in one hand, his face red with rage and triumph. Harper, there's nowhere to... He froze. The entryway was flooded with warm golden light from the great room beyond, and standing there, champagne glasses in hand, were 30 of Oak Haven's most prominent citizens. The room fell into a terrified silence. Guests lowered their glasses, stepping back as the front door shuddered under the blows. The string quartet had stopped playing abruptly. Felix stood there, panting, the bolt cutters looking obscene in the elegant room. He stared at the mayor, at the Historical Society president, at the town's wealthiest donors, and at Sheriff Brody, whose hand was now resting openly on his badge. The only sound was Tiffany's phone still recording, still live-streaming this entire catastrophic miscalculation to her 18,000 followers. Felix Lawson, Sheriff Brody said, setting down his champagne glass and stepping forward. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You're under arrest. I have a lease. You have forged documents. You have a zoning board cease and desist order. And now you have just committed breaking and entering with burglary tools in front of 36 witnesses? Brody pulled his handcuffs from his belt. This is no longer a civil matter. Declan tried to step forward, to play the mediator, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Officer, please, this is just a family misunderstanding. Mr. Lawson, Brody interrupted. I have arrest warrants for you as well. Forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft. Step over here, please. I stood on the landing of the grand staircase, looking down at them. Felix's eyes found mine, and for a moment I saw something almost like desperation. Harper, please! We're family. You can't do this. Mr. Declan Lawson, I said quietly, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. Please direct all future communications to my attorney. 2 more squad cars pulled up outside, lights flashing red and blue across the snow. 4 officers entered through the broken doorway. Felix was handcuffed first, breaking and entering. Criminal trespass. Possession of burglary tools. Animal cruelty from the incident with Barnaby. The identity theft charge from the utility fraud. Declan was next. Forgery. Conspiracy. Fraud. Tiffany stood in the doorway, still holding her phone. watching it all unfold on her own live stream. The comments were scrolling past faster than she could read them, but I could see her face going pale as she realized what she'd just broadcast. She looked at Felix, at the handcuffs, at the watching crowd. I didn't know. Felix, you said this was legal. You said. Tiffany, don't. Felix started, but she was already backing away. We're done, she said flatly. I'm not going down with you. She turned and ran for the gate, her phone still broadcasting her escape. Sheriff Brody walked Felix and Declan outside, reading them their rights in the cold night air. I watched from the doorway as they were loaded into separate squad cars, blue lights painting the snow. Felix looked back once, his expression unreadable through the window. Then the cars pulled away, tires crunching on ice, and they were gone. The mayor cleared his throat behind me. Harper, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I turned back to the gathered crowd, to the concerned faces, and the quiet conversations. Thank you all for being here. I know this wasn't the New Year's celebration you expected. On the contrary, the Historical Society president said, raising her glass. I think we just witnessed justice. To Harper Lawson, and to Blackwood Manor. The others raised their glasses. To Harper. Chase was at my side then, his hand gentle on my shoulder. Are you okay? I looked around at the broken door, the scattered snow melting on my floors, the bolt cutters lying in my entryway like a discarded weapon. Then I looked at the people filling my home, not invaders, but guests I'd chosen. People who'd stood witness to my stand. Yes, I said, and realized I meant it. I'm okay. Outside, midnight struck. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks began to bloom against the winter sky. The siege was over. 5 months later, spring came to Oakhaven. The gardens of Blackwood Manor erupted in color tulips and daffodils pushing through the thawed earth, dogwood trees unfurling white blossoms against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The heavy snow was a memory now, replaced by warm breezes that carried the scent of lilacs through open windows. I sat in the garden with a cup of tea, my laptop balanced on a wrought iron table, reviewing restoration proposals for the carriage house. But the work didn't feel urgent anymore. Didn't feel like survival. It felt like what it was supposed to be, a labor of love. A project I chose because I wanted to, not because I was running from something. Barnaby lay in a patch of sunlight near my feet, his gray muzzle resting on Chase's boots. The old dog's hip had healed well, though he still limped on cold mornings. But the fear was gone. The flinching when men approached, the panic at loud noises, all of it had gradually faded over the winter months. Now he slept peacefully while Chase worked, carefully brushing dirt from a fragment of pottery he'd found near the old garden wall. Looks like Wedgwood, Chase murmured, holding the piece up to the light. Probably 1,880 seconds, given the pattern. Your Victorian-era residents had good taste. They also buried their trash in the flower beds, I pointed out. He grinned. Archaeologists call that enriching the historical record. I smiled, watching him work. Over the winter, as the legal aftermath of New Year's Eve had played out, Chase had become a constant presence. Not intrusive, never pushing, just there. Helping me repair the front door, bringing coffee when I had to give depositions, sitting with Barnaby when I needed to meet with lawyers. Somewhere along the way, colleague had shifted to friend, and then to something that didn't have a clean label yet, something that made me feel safe instead of trapped. The brass plaque on the front gate caught the sunlight, its engraving sharp and clear. Property of Oakhaven Heritage Trust. By invitation only. Not. I'd had it installed in February, after the criminal trials concluded. Felix had pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence, 18 months in minimum security, plus restitution and probation. Declan had tried to fight the forgery charge, but the evidence was overwhelming. He got 2 years. Mom had never been charged. She'd claimed ignorance, said she'd just been trying to help her son, that she didn't know the documents were forged or that Felix planned to commit fraud. The prosecutors hadn't been able to prove otherwise, but she'd stopped calling. Stopped posting on Facebook about her ungrateful daughter. The silence from her was more telling than any conviction could have been. I'd blocked her number anyway. Some bridges weren't worth maintaining. Harper? Chase's voice pulled me back. He was watching me with that careful expression he got when he thought I was drifting into dark thoughts. You okay? Yeah, I closed my laptop. I was just thinking about how different things are now. Good different? I looked around the garden at the blooming flowers, at Barnaby sleeping peacefully, at the manor standing solid and warm behind us. At Chase, with dirt under his fingernails and pottery shards scattered across his work cloth, looking at me like I was something worth protecting. Very good, different. He smiled, his hand found mine across the table, fingers intertwining. Then he went back to his excavation work. A car passed on the road beyond the gate, some tourist, probably, drawn by the Historical Society's new walking tour that featured Blackwood Manor as a preservation success story. I didn't tense anymore when I heard engines. Didn't rush to check who was arriving. The gate was locked. The alarms were set. And more importantly, I'd learned the difference between being isolated and being protected. I'd learned how to build boundaries without apology. I'd learned that family wasn't defined by blood, but by who showed up when you needed them, who respected your no, who celebrated your victories without demanding a cut of the spoils. Barnaby shifted in his sleep, his paws twitching with dreams that no longer seemed like nightmares. Chase hummed softly as he worked, some old folk song I didn't recognize but found comforting anyway. The afternoon sun warmed my shoulders, and for the first time in years, maybe in my entire life, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. Not the fragile, temporary peace I'd tried to buy by appeasing people who saw me as an ATM. Not the anxious peace of hiding and hoping I wouldn't be found. Real peace. The kind that came from knowing I'd fought for something and won. The kind that came from choosing who I let through my gates and who I kept out. The kind that came from finally understanding that protecting myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I squeezed Chase's hand, and he squeezed back, his eyes crinkling with a smile even as he focused on his work. Behind us, Blackwood Manor stood sentinel, its windows gleaming in the spring light. No longer a fortress under siege, a home, my home. And this time, the gate that protected it was there not to hide fear, but to shelter the happiness I'd built inside. After 11 years building my family's restaurant into a local gem, my parents replaced me with my MBA-toting little brother. 9 days later, they lost an $850,000 deal I had landed, and then came begging for my help. The award plaque slips from my fingers as I stand frozen in the doorway of Riverside Ember's private dining room. The glass trophy crashes against the polished hardwood floor, the crack echoing like a gunshot through the silence. No one even flinches. Their eyes remain fixed on the projection screen, where my brother's PowerPoint presentation glows with corporate confidence. Riverside Ember Expansion Strategy, CEO Caleb Morgan. CEO Caleb Morgan. My throat constricts as I scan the faces around our antique mahogany table. My father's proud smile, my mother's hands clasped in anticipation, and my brother's perfectly pressed suit as he stands at the head of the table. My table. The place I've occupied for over a decade of family meetings. Jovi, Dad says, clearing his throat. You're late. We've already started the annual meeting. Annual meeting? My voice sounds distant to my own ears. You moved it up 2 weeks. The restaurant's 15th anniversary celebration is tomorrow. I've been finalizing details all morning. Caleb clicks to the next slide. Which is exactly why we need to formalize the transition now. The celebration provides the perfect announcement opportunity. Transition? The word tastes bitter. Mom leans forward. Honey, we've transferred operational control to Caleb, effective immediately. We wanted to surprise you. Congratulations, I whisper, but no one hears me over the sound of my world shattering. Just last week, I stood under the spotlights at the Portland Culinary Excellence Awards, accepting Seafood Dish of the Year for my king crab with tangerine glaze. The audience had erupted in applause, but at our celebration dinner afterward, my parents had merely picked at their food. It's nice, Jovi, Dad had said, swirling his wine, but not scalable. We need to think bigger. Meanwhile, they'd raised their glasses to Caleb, toasting his business school network and fresh perspectives. Never mind that while he visited during summer breaks, I spent countless nights perfecting recipes, building relationships with local suppliers, and doubling our revenue over the last 5 years. Now, I grip the back of a chair to steady myself. You can't be serious. I have a culinary degree. I built our marketing strategy. I doubled our revenue. And we appreciate that, honey. Dad's tone drips with condescension. You're fantastic in the kitchen, but Caleb understands business. You can still be our head chef. Head chef. As if I haven't been running this entire operation for years while they semi-retired to their lake house. As if the awards, the glowing reviews, the loyal customers who know me by name mean nothing. My hands stop trembling as clarity washes over me. I reach into my pocket, remove my restaurant keys, and place them deliberately on the table with a metallic clink. I'm not just your chef. I built this brand. Caleb sighs dramatically. See, Dad? This is exactly what I warned you about. She's too emotional about business decisions. Dad frowns. Jovi, you need to understand. This isn't personal, it's about scaling the business. Not personal? I laugh. The sound sharp and unfamiliar. You blindsided me during the anniversary celebration I organized. You didn't even consult me about changes to the restaurant I've poured my heart into for 11 years. That's enough, Mom cuts in. Caleb has an MBA. He knows what he's doing. And there it is, the familiar pattern. They automatically side with Caleb, dismissing my concerns as emotional overreactions rather than legitimate business insights. It's not just my position at risk, but my culinary reputation, the quality standards I've established, the relationships I've nurtured with suppliers and customers. As I look at them huddled together, a realization crystallizes in my mind. They've never seen me as an equal partner. To them, I've always been staff, the reliable worker who keeps things running while they make the real decisions. You know what? I say, my voice steadier than I feel. Maybe you're right. Maybe Caleb should take over. Their faces relax with visible relief. But remember this moment. I continue, stepping back toward the door. Because when you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect me to pick up the pieces. I turn and walk out, leaving behind the shattered award that suddenly means nothing at all. Later that night, I only meant to grab my apron from the office, not to discover the depth of my brother's treachery. But there it is on Caleb's open laptop, the West Shore Grand Hotel's logo glaring from his screen like an accusation. My vision narrows as I read the email, my fingers gripping the doorframe to steady myself. Dear Mr. Morgan, we acknowledge your cancellation of Thursday's contract meeting. While we're disappointed to postpone discussions on the $850,000 catering partnership, we look forward to your presentation of streamlined, cost-effective alternatives to the original menu proposal. The floor seems to tilt beneath me. That meeting wasn't Caleb's to cancel. I'd spent 6 months cultivating that relationship, designing seasonal menus, calculating exact food costs that would maintain our quality while ensuring their profit margins. $850,000, nearly a quarter of our annual revenue dismissed with a single email. I scroll down, nausea building as I read further. Regarding your inquiry about modifying the award-winning seafood offerings, we're open to alternatives provided they maintain the standard of excellence we experienced during our initial tasting with Chef Jovi. The betrayal runs deeper than I imagined. Just 3 weeks ago, Caleb had leaned over my station, notebook in hand, asking detailed questions about my tangerine glaze recipe. Just trying to learn from the best, he'd said with that boyish grin that always worked on our parents. Now I understand he wasn't learning. He was plotting. My hands shake with an anger so profound it feels like another presence in the room. 6 years of culinary school. 11 years of 60-hour weeks. Also, my brother could swoop in with his MBA and his PowerPoint slides and dismantle everything I've built. The next morning, I pushed through the service entrance of Riverside Ember, 30 minutes before the supplier meeting I wasn't invited to attend. The kitchen staff exchange worried glances as I pass, their whispers following me down the hallway. I pause outside the private dining room, listening to Caleb's confident tenor. The door is slightly ajar, giving me a clear view of the antique mahogany table where Marcus, our fishmonger of 8 years, sits with a deep furrow between his brows. Beside him is Eleanor, whose family farm has provided our produce since before I joined the restaurant. Across from them sits Caleb in a charcoal suit that still has the tailor's chalk marks visible at the cuffs. The premium seafood orders are simply unsustainable at our current scale, Caleb is saying, sliding glossy folders across the table. We'll be transitioning to a more consistent supplier with nationwide distribution. Marcus clears his throat. Chef Jovi specifically chose our products because we can guarantee same-day catch. Your customers will taste the difference. Our customers are looking for value and consistency. Caleb counters smoothly. Similarly, Eleanor, we'll be consolidating our produce orders through Portland Restaurant Supply. Their volume discounts will substantially improve our margins. Eleanor's weathered hand tightens around her mug. Those tomatoes you love come from my southeastern field. They get morning sun but afternoon shade. That's why they're sweeter than anything you'll get from a wholesale distributor. I can't stay silent any longer. I push the door open, and 3 heads swivel toward me. Jovi. Caleb's smile doesn't reach his eyes. This is a private meeting. With my suppliers, I counter, moving to stand behind Marcus and Eleanor. The people who've helped build our reputation for quality. Caleb sighs dramatically. My sister is having trouble adjusting to the new direction. Please direct all questions to me going forward. What new direction? I ask, reaching for the folder in front of Marcus. Inside are mock-ups of new menus. My award-winning king crab with tangerine glaze is gone. So is my cedar plank salmon with huckleberry reduction. In their place are generic descriptions: grilled seafood platter and fish of the day. You're standardizing the menu, I say, the words sour in my mouth. For chain expansion. We're creating scalable systems, Caleb corrects, standing to reassert his authority. Dad and Mom agree it's the right move. The stakes crystallize in my mind with perfect clarity. This isn't just about my job, it's about everything I've built. My culinary reputation. The loyal customers who come specifically for my seasonal creations. And now, the $850,000 West Shore Grand contract that could have secured our financial future while maintaining our standards. Marcus, I say quietly, what will happen to your business without our orders? The fishmonger shakes his head. We'll survive, but I've got 2 boats that fish primarily for Riverside Ember. I'll need to let one captain go. Eleanor adds, and I've been expanding my heirloom varieties based on your menu plans, Jovi. If you're not buying, I'll have to plow under half my crops this season. Caleb clears his throat. These are unfortunate but necessary business adjustments. Speaking of adjustments, Jovi, we should discuss your compensation package. The head chef position doesn't warrant executive-level pay. The final insult lands like a physical blow. 11 years of 60-hour weeks building this restaurant's reputation, and now I'm facing a demotion and pay cut while watching everything I've created being dismantled for the sake of scalable systems. Later that evening, after everyone has gone, Daniel finds me in the kitchen, methodically packing my personal knives. The kitchen staff is with you, he says quietly, his voice steady after 8 years as my sous chef. Whatever you decide to do, we believe in your standards, not his. As I wrap my favorite Santoku knife in protective cloth, the question weighs heavy on my mind. Should I stay and fight for the business I helped build, or walk away completely and start fresh? Fighting meant painful daily confrontations with my family, but leaving meant abandoning everything I'd worked for over a decade. What would you do when the people who should value you most fail to see your worth? 2 days later, the staff meeting invitation appears in my inbox, with the subject line, Menu Overhaul Implementation, Mandatory Attendance. I read it twice, my jaw tightening. Caleb has scheduled it during prep time when he knows I'm busiest. The conference room buzzes with nervous energy when I slip in 5 minutes late, hands still damp from prepping vegetables. Caleb stands at the head of the table, my spot, his tailored suit a stark contrast to my flour-dusted chef's coat. Perfect timing, Jovi. I was just explaining our exciting new direction. Caleb clicks to the next slide, revealing a streamlined menu stripped of my signature dishes. We're implementing these changes effective tomorrow. But the king crab with tangerine glaze is our most requested dish. Lauren, our lead server, protests. We have regulars who come specifically for it. Caleb's smile tightens. The new menu prioritizes efficiency and scalability. We can't be held hostage to one chef's specialties. One chef. Like I'm just another employee instead of the person who built this restaurant's reputation. The changes hit like a tsunami. Within days, regular customers begin questioning servers about missing favorites. Mrs. Abernathy, who celebrated her anniversary here for 8 years, leaves without ordering, when told the halibut with preserved lemon is no longer available. What happened to the quality? Becomes a common question, and Caleb's response is always the same: blame the kitchen staff. Not his decisions. Not his leadership. The execution in the back of house isn't meeting our standards. I overhear him telling the Millers, longtime patrons who sent back their overcooked steaks. Lauren's face burns with embarrassment as she apologizes for food she knows isn't what it should be. The final blow comes when Portland Plate, the city's most respected food blog, publishes a review titled, "Has Riverside Ember Lost Its Flame?" The writer, who'd previously praised my innovative approach to traditional American cuisine, now questions whether the restaurant has abandoned its commitment to quality in favor of mass appeal. Inside the kitchen, the sabotage continues. I arrive one morning to find my specialty equipment, the custom smoker, the imported mandolin, the precision thermometers relocated to storage. In their place stand 3 identical deep fryers. Where's my equipment? I demand. Caleb said we need more fryer capacity for the new appetizer menu, Daniel explains, not meeting my eyes. Your stuff is in the storage closet by the loading dock. Each night, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, mentally recreating recipes I've spent years perfecting. For the first time since culinary school, cooking feels like a burden rather than a joy. The kitchen, once my sanctuary, has become a battleground where every dish is a potential conflict. The staff walks on eggshells, caught between loyalty to me and fear of unemployment. When I instruct the line cooks to finish the salmon with compound butter, Caleb countermands the order moments later. The recipe says olive oil only, he announces loudly. We need consistency, not improvisation. But cooking isn't manufacturing. It's art and science and intuition all wrapped together. Caleb's standardization strips away everything that makes food worth creating. After one particularly grueling service where 3 tables sent back Caleb's version of my scallop dish, I retreat to the walk-in cooler, pressing my forehead against the cold metal shelving. Tears of frustration threaten, but I refuse to let them fall. That night, I start documenting everything: recipes, techniques, supplier relationships in a leather-bound journal. If I can't preserve my kitchen, I'll at least preserve my culinary legacy. The next evening, after everyone has gone home, I find a small tangerine placed precisely at my station. Beneath it lies a handwritten note in Daniel's unmistakable scrawl. Your recipes, your vision. Some things can't be replaced, even by an MBA. For the first time in weeks, I smile. The breaking point comes during prep for the West Shore Grand Executive Dinner. The kitchen thrums with tension as staff rush to prepare for the most important service since Caleb took over. The $850,000 contract hangs in the balance. I'm adjusting the seasoning on the sauce reduction when my father appears in the doorway, Caleb at his shoulder. Jovi, we need to talk about tonight's menu, Dad says, his voice carefully modulated. Caleb has some concerns about your preparations. My preparations are exactly what won us this opportunity in the first place, I reply, not looking up from the simmering pot. Jovi, you need to accept that Caleb's in charge now, Dad says, stepping closer. This is business, not personal. The wooden spoon freezes in my hand. Everything about food is personal. That's why people come back. They don't connect with efficiency, they connect with passion. The West Shore people want to see scalable concepts, Caleb interrupts, not fancy one-offs that only you can execute. His words crystallize everything wrong with their vision. They don't want a restaurant, they want a production line. They don't want my food, they want something anyone could make. You know what I realized? I say, setting down the spoon and untying my apron. We don't share the same values anymore. You see food as a commodity. I see it as an experience. Don't be dramatic, Dad says. We're talking about a business decision. No, we're talking about my life's work. I face them both squarely. I'm not going to watch you destroy what I've built. I quit and I'm taking my recipes with me. The kitchen falls silent. Even the hood vents seem to hold their breath. You can't quit, Caleb sputters. Not tonight. Not with West Shore coming. Watch me. I haven't even reached the door when Daniel steps forward. If Chef Jovi is leaving, so am I. 3 more cooks remove their aprons. The sous chef, the pastry chef, the line lead, my people, my team. Later that evening, my phone buzzes with a text from Eleanor, my produce supplier. Wherever you land, your special ordering arrangement comes with you. Quality recognizes quality. For the first time, I allow myself to envision something new, not fighting for scraps of respect in my family's restaurant, but building something truly mine. That night, I sketch concepts for my own restaurant in the margins of my recipe journal, the pages filled with possibilities rather than grievances. The next morning, I make 2 calls. First to Anthony Vicente, West Shore Grand's culinary director, requesting a private meeting. The second call surprises even me. As I clear out my office, A business card falls from my desk calendar. Marianne Wells, restaurant space realtor. We'd met at a Chamber of Commerce event months ago, and she'd mentioned a prime location opening in the Pearl District. I pick up my phone, my fingers steady as I dial her number. Marianne? It's Jovi Morgan. I think I'm ready for that space we discussed. A week later, my portfolio slides across the polished mahogany table toward Jason Mercer, whose weathered hands have funded 3 of Portland's most successful restaurants. The morning light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the conference room of Portland First Capital. I've followed your work at Riverside Ember for years, Jason says, studying my king crab with tangerine glaze photo. Your flavor combinations are remarkable. I straighten my burgundy blazer, channeling confidence I've rebuilt over the past week. My vision is modern American cuisine featuring sustainable, local ingredients. The dishes that won awards weren't flukes, they were the culmination of relationships with suppliers who understand my standards. Jason nods appreciatively. Most chefs talk ingredients. You talk relationships and systems. That's refreshing. I've prepared for this moment meticulously, rehearsing my pitch while designing my business plan into the early hours. The separation from Riverside Ember burns fresh, but determination has replaced the initial shock. I won't just recreate what worked before, I explain, turning to the financial projections. I've identified exactly where costs can be trimmed without compromising quality. Before I finish my presentation, Jason leans forward. I'll back you. Your portfolio speaks for itself, but your clarity about lessons learned from the family business tells me you're ready to lead. How soon can you secure a location? A weight lifts from my shoulders. Actually, I've found a space in the Pearl District. The previous restaurant closed 3 months ago, fully equipped kitchen, excellent foot traffic. Jason raises an eyebrow. Impressive preparation. 2 hours later, I stand in the empty restaurant space, negotiating terms with the property manager. Sunlight spills through windows that will soon showcase Jovi's hearth to passersby. Each decision feels like reclaiming a piece of myself. Back at my apartment, my phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. Disaster at West Shore Grand Meeting. Execs not happy. Caleb sweating bullets. I pour a glass of Pinot Noir, savoring both the flavor and the news. The meeting Caleb hijacked from me has apparently gone exactly as I predicted. Daniel calls an hour later. You would have laughed, he says, his voice hushed. Caleb tried serving your tangerine glaze, but it was nothing like yours. Too sweet, weird consistency. He added too much sugar to compensate for using inferior tangerines, I reply, knowing my brother's tendencies. The executives noticed immediately. One of them actually asked where you were, Daniel chuckles. They cut the meeting short, saying they needed to reconsider certain aspects of the partnership. Caleb looked like he might throw up. I lean back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. And the fallout? Chaos. Caleb's calling every supplier, trying to figure out what's wrong with the ingredients. But Eleanor's not answering his calls, and Marcus told him the premium seafood he's been getting was based on your relationship. Relationships take years to build. I murmur. That's not all, Daniel continues. 3 corporate events canceled today. Words spreading about quality issues. Your parents look shell-shocked. The news should feel more satisfying than it does. Instead, I feel a complicated tangle of vindication and sadness for the restaurant's reputation I worked so hard to build. My phone beeps with an incoming call, Mom. I let it go to voicemail, then listen. Jovi, honey, please call us back. The West Shore Grand Dinner is next week, and we need your help. The family needs you. Please. Her voice cracks on the final plea. I press my forehead against the cool window glass, watching traffic below. When my mother called that evening, tearfully asking me to save the family by helping with the West Shore Grand Dinner, I hesitated. Would returning to help preserve what I'd built show strength, or would it simply enable more of the same behavior that pushed me out? The next morning, Daniel arrives at my apartment with a folder. Thought you might want these, he says, sliding a stack of papers across my kitchen counter. Daily revenue reports, reservation numbers, customer complaints. They're spiraling. I flip through the documents, noting the sharp decline. They'll blame external factors. They're trying, but the numbers don't lie. Daniel leans against the counter. The kitchen staff is with you. Just say the word. Later, Eleanor introduces me to specialty farmers from the Willamette Valley, who can supply Jovi's hearth with heirloom vegetables unavailable to larger restaurants. We walk between rows of rainbow chard, the morning dew still clinging to the leaves. These families have been farming for generations, Eleanor explains. They're excited about working with a chef who appreciates their craft. Marcus calls while I'm driving home. Jovi, I've got a shipment of Alaskan king crab coming next week. Premium quality. And I'm having dinner with Thomas Reynolds tomorrow night. I nearly swerve. The Thomas Reynolds? From Coastal Ventures? The very same. He's looking to invest in a new restaurant concept. I might have mentioned your name. The pieces fall into place faster than I dared hope. With Marcus's seafood connections, Eleanor's produce network, and Daniel's insider information, I can accelerate my timeline by weeks. That afternoon, I receive an email that makes my hands tremble. West Shore Grand executives requesting a meeting to discuss my independent culinary concepts. They've found me. Meanwhile, Riverside Ember's social media pages fill with questions. Where's Chef Jovi? Is she coming back? One review reads, food quality has declined dramatically, missing the previous chef's touch. My father's voicemails grow increasingly desperate. Jovi, this West Shore contract is critical for our expansion. Please reconsider. We can talk about your position. The crack in their facade widens with each passing day. Pride crumbles under the weight of consequences, revealing the truth I've always known. They need me far more than I need them. I stand in the empty space that will become Jovi's hearth, envisioning the future taking shape, a future built on respect, quality, and my unwavering standards. For the first time since walking out of Riverside Ember, I smile without reservation. A week later, the sight of my father's Lexus pulling up outside my new restaurant space sends a wave of satisfaction through me. For once, they're coming to me. I stand in the doorway watching as all three emerge, Dad with his shoulders unnaturally stiff, Mom glancing nervously at the "For Lease" sign now sporting a bold pending sticker, and Caleb trailing behind in uncharacteristic silence. Jovi, Dad attempts a warm smile that doesn't reach his eyes. This is interesting. A bit small compared to Riverside, isn't it? I don't respond, simply holding the door open. The construction dust hangs in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Exposed brick walls and reclaimed wood flooring create exactly the atmosphere I've envisioned. We've been trying to reach you, Mom says, her fingers worrying at her pearl necklace. The restaurant needs you. Caleb clears his throat. We've developed a new proposal. He pulls out a leather portfolio. Equal partnership between us. You handle the kitchen, I manage the business side. With us retaining final decision authority, Dad adds quickly, for continuity. When I don't immediately respond, his tone shifts. The family legacy is at stake, Jovi. Don't you care about what Grandpa built? What we've all built together? Mom steps closer, her voice softening. We're offering you what you wanted. Why are you being so stubborn? I walk to the makeshift desk in the corner where my laptop sits open. You know what's interesting? You never once asked what I actually wanted. I turn the screen toward them, revealing my business plan. And now it's too late. Their confused expressions fuel something warm in my chest. I secured my own funding 2 weeks ago. The lease is signed. I pull out a folder and remove a document with the West Shore Grand logo emblazoned across the top. And this arrived yesterday. And this? Dad snatches it, eyes widening as he reads. This is a letter of intent for partnership. $500,000? Exclusive arrangement featuring my signature dishes. I can't help the pride in my voice. They were quite interested in working with the actual chef behind the award-winning menu, not a corporate substitute. You can't do this, Caleb stammers. The West Shore deal was ours. It was mine. I cultivated that relationship for 3 years. I moved to the center of the room. I didn't want partnership. I wanted respect. And I found investors who give me both. From another folder, I withdraw a stack of papers and hand them to my father. These might interest you too. He flips through the printouts, color draining from his face. Online reviews of Riverside Ember since my departure. Quality has plummeted. Not the same restaurant. Where's the chef who made this place special? Mom peers over his shoulder, her hand covering her mouth. I walk past them toward the kitchen area, gesturing at the space around us. The hood ventilation goes in next week. We're keeping the open kitchen concept, but expanding the chef's counter to seat 12. I ignore their attempts to interject. The wine program will feature small local vineyards, and we're installing a wood-fired oven there. Dad's face reddens. You're making a mistake. The Riverside Ember name has recognition. People know us. B maybe. I was never building your brand. I was building mine. The truth feels liberating. People came for my food, not your name. That's what you never understood. The front door chimes, and two men in coveralls enter, carrying a large package. Delivery for Jovi Morgan? Perfect timing, I say, signing for the package. The men carefully unwrap it, revealing a copper sign with hand-hammered letters, Jovi's Hearth. The men hold it up against the exposed brick wall above, where the entrance to the dining room will be. Soft copper glows in the afternoon light. You'll lose everything, Caleb says, but his voice wavers. I already did. 11 years of work. My family's trust. I turn to face him fully. But I'm building something better. Caleb's perfect composure finally cracks. We can't recreate your dishes. Nothing tastes the same. The seafood supplier won't even return my calls. That's because cooking isn't a business formula. It's a relationship with the food and the people you serve. I run my hand along the reclaimed wood counter. You can't quantify passion or scale personal connection. When they leave, shoulders slumped in defeat, I stand in the center of my space. My restaurant. My future. The satisfaction is deeper than I expected. 2 weeks later, Daniel forwards me an email about Riverside Ember seeking a bridge loan to cover operational shortfalls. Regular customers have been drifting away, and rumors spread about a complete menu overhaul in a desperate bid to rebrand. The family question remains unresolved. My phone shows 3 missed calls from Mom just today, but I'm not ready to answer. Not yet. There's too much to do, too much at stake. On the night of Jovi's Hearth soft opening, I weave between tables filled with food critics, loyal former customers, and industry friends. The kitchen hums with the beautiful chaos I've created, executing my vision precisely as I imagined. Near closing, I emerge for a final greeting round when I spot her, my mother, sitting alone at a corner table, a half-finished plate of my king crab with tangerine glaze before her. Our eyes meet across the room, and for the first time in months, I see something beyond the disappointment and manipulation. Recognition. 6 months later, the copper saucepan sings against the flame as I reduce the tangerine glaze, no longer needing to justify my decision to triple the fresh fruit or the splash of bourbon I add on instinct. Behind me, 3 line cooks move with practiced precision, their knives flashing as they prep for tonight's service. Chef, we're ready for the tasting menu review. Daniel calls, now my executive sous chef, rather than just an ally in a kitchen that never truly valued either of us. I nod, allowing myself a moment to admire the gleaming expanse of Jovi's Hearth. My restaurant, my vision, my rules. The fall menu changes I've planned celebrate local harvests rather than compromising with frozen substitutes Caleb would have insisted upon. The seasonal rotation has become our hallmark, drawing praise from critics who once barely knew Riverside Ember existed. Coming. I answer, wiping my hands on my apron as I move toward the prep station where Zoe, a culinary student I've taken under my wing, anxiously awaits my verdict on her sauce work. The consistency is perfect, I tell her, remembering how my mother once dismissed my first reduction as too fussy. I add, now tell me why you chose thyme instead of rosemary. Her explanation shows promise. This is how mentorship should feel, not dismissal dressed as guidance, but genuine investment in someone's growth. Later, my phone buzzes with another reservation request. We're booked solid through December, with food critics from Chicago and New York requesting tables. National press attention has turned our corner of Portland into a destination, vindicating every sleepless night spent perfecting recipes in my tiny apartment kitchen after leaving my family's restaurant. The afternoon mail brings an envelope from the American Culinary Federation. Inside, an invitation to next month's awards ceremony, where Jovi's Hearth is nominated for Restaurant of the Year. The same ceremony where, just 18 months ago, I stood clutching an award while my parents whispered about my brother's business acumen. When the announcement comes at the gala, I don't drop the plaque in shock like last time. Instead, I accept it with steady hands, the spotlight warm on my face as I thank my team by name: Daniel, Eleanor, who still supplies our produce, Marcus, whose seafood makes our signature dishes possible, and every cook who believed enough to follow me. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. I tell the audience, my voice carrying confidence I've earned through fire. It's about proving yourself right. Back at the restaurant, we gather after closing. Eleanor brings champagne while Marcus proudly displays the first advance copy of my cookbook. Daniel uncorks the bottle with a satisfying pop, filling glasses around our family table, the one where staff meals are shared, not where decisions are dictated. To building something that truly reflects who we are, I toast, not who others think we should be. Their glasses rise in response, light catching the bubbles inside. The next morning, spread across my desk, 5 different expansion offers from luxury hotels sit alongside an invitation to judge the Pacific Northwest culinary competition. My grandfather's weathered photo watches from its frame beside my awards, his original diner that started it all, before business plans and MBAs entered our family vocabulary. A knock at my office door reveals Caleb, resume in hand, here for the operations director interview I agreed to after our mother's tearful intervention at Christmas. As I consider whether to bring my brother into my business, I wonder if some family relationships can be rebuilt on new foundations, or if some bridges, once burned, should stay crossed. Would you give someone who betrayed you professionally a second chance if they showed genuine change, or is business and family best kept permanently separate? Sometimes the biggest favor someone can do is underestimate you. It forces you to truly value yourself.
After 6 grueling years of painful fertility treatments and empty promises, my hedge fund manager husband walked into our bathroom, snatched the syringe from my hand, and threw divorce papers into the sink. "Stop stabbing yourself," he sneered. "You are barren, and my intern is already 12 weeks pregnant." He thought kicking me out into the freezing snow with absolutely nothing would destroy me. He had no idea the lonely former sheriff living next door to my temporary shack was actually a billionaire medical heir, or that 6 months later, I would be pregnant with twins standing beside the one man who could dismantle my ex-husband's entire empire. My name is Brianna, 33 years old, and a digital marketing specialist who spent nearly a decade believing I was the reason my marriage was failing. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had your heart shattered by the person who promised to protect it. The cold marble floor of our master bathroom sent a chill up my bare legs, but it was nothing compared to the sharp pinch of the needle. I stood in front of the vanity mirror, gripping a fold of skin on my stomach. It was my 104th hormone injection. 104 times I had bruised my own body, enduring the intense nausea, the crippling mood swings, and the crushing disappointment that followed every single negative pregnancy test. The physical toll was exhausting, but the mental burden was far heavier. Trent, my husband of 7 years, was supposed to be right beside me. He was supposed to hold my hand, tell me I was brave, and whisper that this time the embryo transfer would finally work. Instead, the heavy oak door flew open with such violent force that it slammed against the wall, rattling the framed wedding photo hanging nearby. Trent stood in the doorway. At 35, he was a senior partner at a top-tier hedge fund in Chicago, always immaculately dressed in tailored suits, projecting an image of absolute corporate perfection. But looking at him now, his jaw clenched, and his eyes devoid of any warmth, I saw the ruthless businessman he usually reserved for his market rivals. He did not ask if I was in pain. He did not offer any comfort. He simply marched over and tossed a thick manila folder directly into the wet sink. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling as I carefully capped the syringe and set it down on the counter. "Divorce papers," he said flatly. "Sign them by tomorrow." The words did not process immediately. I stared at the folder, watching the water from the faucet slowly soak into the thick paper, ruining the edges. "Trent, what are you talking about?" I managed to say, my breath catching in my throat. "We have the transfer scheduled for next week. The clinic said my hormone levels are finally looking good. We are so close." "Stop stabbing yourself, Brianna," he sneered, crossing his arms over his chest. "It is pathetic. You are barren. The clinic is just taking our money, and I am completely done pretending that your broken body is ever going to give me a child." His words sliced through me like a physical blade. For 6 years, I had blamed myself. I had absorbed the passive-aggressive comments from his mother, Barbara, who always made sure to remind me at Thanksgiving dinners that Trent needed an heir for his legacy. I had pushed through the grueling schedule of my remote marketing job while managing endless doctor appointments, all while Trent traveled for client meetings and expensive golf tournaments, claiming he was building our future. I endured the invasive procedures and the judgment because I believed we were a team fighting a shared battle. I am not giving up. I choked out tears, finally spilling over my cheeks and dripping onto my robe. We promised each other through sickness and health. You promised me. I am not giving up either, Trent replied, adjusting his expensive watch with terrifying calm. I am just giving up on you. Lexi is 12 weeks pregnant. We just heard the heartbeat this morning. Lexi. The name dropped into the room like a bomb. She was the 23-year-old intern he had hired 6 months ago. The girl who was barely out of college who giggled at all of his unfunny jokes at the company Christmas party. The girl I had actually felt sorry for because she seemed so young and overwhelmed by the aggressive corporate world Trent operated in. My knees buckled slightly, and I grabbed the edge of the vanity to keep from collapsing to the floor. You slept with your intern, I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. While I was pumping my body full of drugs and crying myself to sleep over our failed cycles, you were sleeping with a college girl. She is not just my intern anymore, Trent said, taking a step backward out of the bathroom. She is the mother of my child, a real woman who can actually give me what I want. Now get dressed. You have exactly 2 hours to pack your things and get out of my house. Your house. I cried out, anger finally piercing through the shock. We bought this house together. I helped pay the mortgage for the first 3 years before you made partner. My parents' trust bought this house. He corrected me with a cruel, satisfied smile. Read the papers in the sink, Brianna. You signed a post-nuptial agreement 3 years ago when my firm went public. You have absolutely no claim to this property or my current assets. He turned his back on me and walked down the hallway without a single backward glance. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, a full-blown panic attack taking over my body. The elegant bathroom walls felt like they were closing in on me. I stumbled out of the bathroom, clutching my robe tightly around my waist, desperate to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around me. I staggered down the sweeping staircase, intending to demand that Trent call his lawyer and explain this sudden, terrifying madness. But as I reached the bottom step and looked into our formal living room, the breath was knocked out of me entirely. Lexi was there. She was not crying. She was not apologizing for destroying my marriage. She was standing next to the coffee table, humming a cheerful pop song, and with a casual, practiced motion, she was sweeping my expensive designer jewelry, my anniversary gifts, my grandmother's pearl necklace, and my diamond tennis bracelet directly into her oversized leather designer purse. When she heard my bare feet on the hardwood floor, she did not flinch or look guilty. She simply looked up, zipped her purse shut with a loud click, and gave me a slow, triumphant smirk. I stared at the heavy leather purse slung over her shoulder, the exact designer bag I had saved up for months to buy myself as a promotion gift 2 years ago. The sheer audacity of her standing in my living room, stealing my hard-earned belongings while carrying the child I had bled and suffered to conceive, left me entirely paralyzed. Lexi brushed a strand of perfectly highlighted blonde hair behind her ear and let out a soft, condescending laugh. "Do not look so shocked, Brianna," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Trent told me you never wear any of this stuff anyway. You are always too busy working in your ugly sweatpants. I figured these pieces deserve to be worn by someone who actually goes out and lives in the real world." Before I could form the words to demand my grandmother's vintage pearl necklace back from her greedy hands, Trent strode into the room carrying a stack of flattened cardboard moving boxes. He dropped them onto the expensive Persian rug with a dull, heavy thud. "You have 1 hour and 45 minutes left," he announced, tapping the face of his silver Rolex. "I suggest you stop glaring at Lexi and start packing your things. The security system codes are being electronically changed at noon. If you are not out of this house by then, I will have the neighborhood private patrol physically escort you off the premises." My chest tightened so painfully I thought my ribs might actually splinter. "Trent, you cannot do this to me," I pleaded, my voice breaking as the reality of the situation crashed over me. "It is freezing outside. A massive blizzard is supposed to hit the city this afternoon. Where am I supposed to go?" "That is no longer my problem," he replied without a shred of human empathy. You should have thought about building a financial backup plan instead of obsessing over getting pregnant and wasting my money on useless medical procedures. Now go pack. Do not make me call security early. I stumbled up the sweeping mahogany staircase, my vision blurred with hot, stinging tears. The physical pain of the morning's hormone injection suddenly throbbed in my lower abdomen, a cruel and agonizing reminder of the child I was trying to give him while he was busy creating one with an intern. I dragged 2 large suitcases from the back of the walk-in closet and began throwing my clothes into them indiscriminately. Sweaters, jeans, whatever my hands could grab. I was shaking so badly I could barely manage the metal zippers. Lexi appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, leaning casually against the doorframe while sipping coffee from my favorite ceramic mug. She watched me scramble in a state of sheer panic, her eyes scanning the items I was frantically tossing into my bags. Are you really taking those? She asked, gesturing toward a pile of my conservative work blouses. They are so old, lady. No wonder Trent lost interest in you. You dress like a boring librarian from the 90s. I am honestly doing you a massive favor by moving in today. This house needs some actual style, and Trent needs a vibrant woman who does not treat intimacy like a depressing medical chore. I stopped packing and glared at her, my hands balling into tight fists until my nails bit into my palms. Get out of my room, I demanded, my voice dropping to a dangerously low register. Lexi rolled her eyes but took a step back into the hallway. It is my room now, she shot back confidently. Do not forget to take your depressing medical charts with you. I do not want those negative barren vibes anywhere near my baby. I shoved the last of my basic necessities into the second suitcase, zipping it shut with a violent tug. I grabbed my purse, my laptop bag, and my car keys. I refused to look back at the elegant bedroom that had been my sanctuary for 7 years. I dragged the heavy suitcases down the stairs, each thump echoing like a final mocking drumbeat on my marriage. Trent and Lexi were sitting close together on the living room sofa, scrolling through a tablet, already planning their new life. Neither of them even bothered to look up as I struggled with the heavy front door and pushed my way out into the biting winter cold. The Chicago wind hit me like a physical blow. The snow had already begun to fall heavily, coating the long driveway in a thick, slippery layer of white. I dragged my luggage to my SUV, fighting against the brutal gusts that whipped my hair across my face and stung my tear-stained cheeks. My hands were completely numb by the time I managed to hoist the heavy bags into the trunk. I climbed into the driver's seat, my entire body violently shaking from both the freezing temperature and the massive adrenaline crash. I started the engine and turned the heater on full blast. As I pulled out of the gated community, the terrifying reality of my situation crushed the breath out of me. I was 33 years old, newly homeless, and driving into a massive blizzard with nowhere to go. My parents lived in Florida, and most of my friends were tied to Trent through his high society corporate circles. If I called them, word would get back to Trent immediately. I was entirely, profoundly alone. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing cramp ripped through my lower abdomen. The intense dosage of IVF hormones was wreaking havoc on my system, and the severe emotional stress was only making the pelvic pain exponentially worse. I doubled over the steering wheel, gasping for air, as another wave of fiery agony hit me. I needed painkillers immediately before I ended up passing out behind the wheel and crashing my car. I spotted a brightly lit gas station through the blinding curtain of snow and carefully navigated my SUV into the empty parking lot. The wind howled menacingly as I pushed my way out of the car and sprinted through the icy slush toward the convenience store doors. Inside, the harsh fluorescent lights made my headache pound harder. I hurried down the narrow aisles, grabbing a large bottle of maximum-strength ibuprofen and a bottle of water. I approached the counter, shivering violently in my thin wool coat. The cashier, an older woman with a tired, sympathetic expression, scanned the items. "That will be $12.50, she said. I reached into my purse and pulled out my primary credit card, a premium joint account card Trent and I shared. I handed it to her, desperate to get back to the warmth of my car and swallow the pills to stop the blinding pain. She swiped the card through the terminal. The machine beeped an angry, discordant tone. "Declined," she stated. looking at the small digital screen. "That is impossible," I said, my heart rate spiking rapidly. "Please try it again. The chip can be temperamental in the cold." She inserted the chip. The machine beeped again. "Still declined, honey. Do you have another card?" Panic began to claw at my throat, suffocating me. I dug frantically into my wallet and pulled out my personal debit card tied to the checking account where my digital marketing salary was directly deposited every 2 weeks. I handed it over with a trembling hand. The cashier swiped it. Beep, declined. My blood ran ice cold, colder than the blizzard outside. "No, no, no, there has to be a mistake with your machine. I have money in that account. I just got paid yesterday." I pulled out my phone and quickly logged into my mobile banking app. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely type my password. The screen loaded and my breath stopped completely. Checking account balance $0. Savings account balance $0. Joint credit card status, account closed. I scrolled down to the transaction history, my eyes widening in pure horror. Exactly 1 hour ago, while I was upstairs crying and packing my suitcases, Trent had executed a series of massive wire transfers. He had completely drained every single account that had my name on it, transferring the funds into an offshore holding account I could not access. He had even taken my direct deposit, stripping away the money I had earned through my own hard work. "I am sorry, miss," the cashier said, her voice softening with pity as she watched the devastation wash over my pale face. "The terminal says the accounts are frozen. If you cannot pay, I have to put these back." I stared at the bottle of painkillers on the counter, the physical agony in my abdomen flaring up again as if mocking my utter helplessness. I looked out the glass doors at the brutal snowstorm raging outside, the wind violently shaking the gas station signs. I had no money, no home, no husband, and no way to even buy a simple bottle of water to swallow a pill. Trent had not just evicted me. He had financially erased me. I stood frozen in the harsh fluorescent light, utterly penniless and completely broken in the middle of the unforgiving snow. After 6 grueling years of painful fertility treatments and empty promises, my hedge fund manager husband walked into our bathroom, snatched the syringe from my hand, and threw divorce papers into the sink. "Stop stabbing yourself," he sneered. "You are barren, and my intern is already 12 weeks pregnant." He thought kicking me out into the freezing snow with absolutely nothing would destroy me. He had no idea the lonely former sheriff living next door to my temporary shack was actually a billionaire medical heir, or that 6 months later, I would be pregnant with twins, standing beside the one man who could dismantle my ex-husband's entire empire. My name is Brianna, 33 years old, and a digital marketing specialist who spent nearly a decade believing I was the reason my marriage was failing. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had your heart shattered by the person who promised to protect it. The cold marble floor of our master bathroom sent a chill up my bare legs, but it was nothing compared to the sharp pinch of the needle. I stood in front of the vanity mirror, gripping a fold of skin on my stomach. It was my 104th hormone injection. 104 times I had bruised my own body, enduring the intense nausea, the crippling mood swings, and the crushing disappointment that followed every single negative pregnancy test. The physical toll was exhausting, but the mental burden was far heavier. Trent, my husband of 7 years, was supposed to be right beside me. He was supposed to hold my hand, tell me I was brave, and whisper that this time the embryo transfer would finally work. Instead, the heavy oak door flew open with such violent force that it slammed against the wall, rattling the framed wedding photo hanging nearby. Trent stood in the doorway. At 35, he was a senior partner at a top-tier hedge fund in Chicago, always immaculately dressed in tailored suits, projecting an image of absolute corporate perfection. But looking at him now, his jaw clenched and his eyes devoid of any warmth, I saw the ruthless businessman he usually reserved for his market rivals. He did not ask if I was in pain. He did not offer any comfort. He simply marched over and tossed a thick manila folder directly into the wet sink. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling, as I carefully capped the syringe and set it down on the counter. "Divorce papers," he said flatly. "Sign them by tomorrow." The words did not process immediately. I stared at the folder, watching the water from the faucet slowly soak into the thick paper, ruining the edges. "Trent, what are you talking about?" I managed to say, my breath catching in my throat. "We have the transfer scheduled for next week. The clinic said my hormone levels are finally looking good. We are so close." "Stop stabbing yourself, Brianna," he sneered, crossing his arms over his chest. "It is pathetic. You are barren. The clinic is just taking our money, and I am completely done pretending that your broken body is ever going to give me a child." His words sliced through me like a physical blade. For 6 years, I had blamed myself. I had absorbed the passive-aggressive comments from his mother, Barbara, who always made sure to remind me at Thanksgiving dinners that Trent needed an heir for his legacy. I had pushed through the grueling schedule of my remote marketing job while managing endless doctor appointments, all while Trent traveled for client meetings and expensive golf tournaments, claiming he was building our future. I endured the invasive procedures and the judgment because I believed we were a team fighting a shared battle. "I am not giving up." I choked out, tears finally spilling over my cheeks and dripping onto my robe. "We promised each other through sickness and health. You promised me." "I am not giving up either," Trent replied, adjusting his expensive watch with terrifying calm. "I am just giving up on you. Lexi is 12 weeks pregnant. We just heard the heartbeat this morning." Lexi. The name dropped into the room like a bomb. She was the 23-year-old intern he had hired 6 months ago, the girl who was barely out of college who giggled at all of his unfunny jokes at the company Christmas party. The girl I had actually felt sorry for because she seemed so young and overwhelmed by the aggressive corporate world Trent operated in. My knees buckled slightly, and I grabbed the edge of the vanity to keep from collapsing to the floor. "You slept with your intern?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. While I was pumping my body full of drugs and crying myself to sleep over our failed cycles, "You were sleeping with a college girl." "She is not just my intern anymore," Trent said, taking a step backward out of the bathroom. "She is the mother of my child. A real woman who can actually give me what I want. Now get dressed. You have exactly 2 hours to pack your things and get out of my house. Your house." I cried out, anger finally piercing through the shock. "We bought this house together. I helped pay the mortgage for the first 3 years before you made partner." "My parents' trust bought this house," he corrected me with a cruel, satisfied smile. "Read the papers in the sink, Brianna. You signed a postnuptial agreement 3 years ago when my firm went public. You have absolutely no claim to this property or my current assets." He turned his back on me and walked down the hallway without a single backward glance. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, a full-blown panic attack taking over my body. The elegant bathroom walls felt like they were closing in on me. I stumbled out of the bathroom, clutching my robe tightly around my waist, desperate to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around me. I staggered down the sweeping staircase, intending to demand that Trent call his lawyer and explain this sudden, terrifying madness. But as I reached the bottom step and looked into our formal living room, the breath was knocked out of me entirely. Lexi was there. She was not crying. She was not apologizing for destroying my marriage. She was standing next to the coffee table, humming a cheerful pop song. And with a casual, practiced motion, she was sweeping my expensive designer jewelry, my anniversary gifts, my grandmother's pearl necklace, and my diamond tennis bracelet directly into her oversized leather designer purse. When she heard my bare feet on the hardwood floor, she did not flinch or look guilty. She simply looked up, zipped her purse shut with a loud click, and gave me a slow, triumphant smirk. I stared at the heavy leather purse slung over her shoulder, the exact designer bag I had saved up for months to buy myself as a promotion gift 2 years ago. The sheer audacity of her standing in my living room, stealing my hard-earned belongings, while carrying the child I had bled and suffered to conceive, left me entirely paralyzed. Lexi brushed a strand of perfectly highlighted blonde hair behind her ear and let out a soft, condescending laugh. "Do not look so shocked, Brianna," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Trent told me you never wear any of this stuff anyway. You are always too busy working in your ugly sweatpants. I figured these pieces deserved to be worn by someone who actually goes out and lives in the real world. Before I could form the words to demand my grandmother's vintage pearl necklace back from her greedy hands, Trent strode into the room carrying a stack of flattened cardboard moving boxes. He dropped them onto the expensive Persian rug with a dull, heavy thud. "You have 1 hour and 45 minutes left," he announced, tapping the face of his silver Rolex. "I suggest you stop glaring at Lexi and start packing your things. The security system codes are being electronically changed at noon. If you are not out of this house by then, I will have the neighborhood private patrol physically escort you off the premises." My chest tightened so painfully I thought my ribs might actually splinter. "Trent, you cannot do this to me," I pleaded, my voice breaking as the reality of the situation crashed over me. "It is freezing outside. A massive blizzard is supposed to hit the city this afternoon. Where am I supposed to go?" "That is no longer my problem," he replied without a shred of human empathy. "You should have thought about building a financial backup plan, instead of obsessing over getting pregnant and wasting my money on useless medical procedures. Now go pack. Do not make me call security early." I stumbled up the sweeping mahogany staircase, my vision blurred with hot, stinging tears. The physical pain of the morning's hormone injection suddenly throbbed in my lower abdomen, a cruel and agonizing reminder of the child I was trying to give him while he was busy creating one with an intern. I dragged 2 large suitcases from the back of the walk-in closet and began throwing my clothes into them indiscriminately. Sweaters, jeans, whatever my hands could grab. I was shaking so badly I could barely manage the metal zippers. Lexi appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, leaning casually against the doorframe while sipping coffee from my favorite ceramic mug. She watched me scramble in a state of sheer panic, her eyes scanning the items I was frantically tossing into my bags. "Are you really taking those?" she asked, gesturing toward a pile of my conservative work blouses. "They are so old lady. No wonder